Chris Jericho is one of the most celebrated and innovative professional wrestlers in WWE history, having built an incredible career that spans multiple decades and includes numerous championships, accolades, and unforgettable moments. His contributions to the wrestling world cannot be overstated, as he is widely regarded as a pioneer of the sport's entertainment-driven evolution. Yet despite all of his accomplishments, WWE's treatment of Chris Jericho has, at times, been a frustrating tale of missed opportunities, underutilization, and even betrayal. While Jericho has managed to carve out an amazing legacy on his own terms, his relationship with WWE, particularly in terms of how he has been handled by the company, leaves much to be desired. Here's a deeper look at how WWE failed Chris Jericho over the years. At the beginning of his WWE journey, Jericho was introduced with great fanfare in 1999. His debut on Monday Night Raw, during an iconic segment with The Rock, was a moment that many fans still talk about. Jericho had finally arrived in WWE after years of grinding in various promotions around the world, including WCW, ECW, and Japan. His charisma, ability on the mic, and in-ring skills made him an instant standout. WWE, however, didn't immediately know what to do with him. Despite the massive initial push, Jericho's early months were filled with odd booking choices, including a puzzling feud with China and a series of poorly executed storylines. In the early days, Jericho was primarily positioned as a mid-card talent, despite his clear potential for stardom. He was often relegated to matches that didn't truly showcase his skill set, with the company not quite understanding what they had in him. His matches were good, but they were not given the time or attention they deserved. While Jericho could be seen as one of the company's most talented assets, WWE was still figuring out where to place him in the overall structure of the roster, especially with established stars like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and Triple H dominating the main event scene. It wasn't until Jericho began to develop his character more fully and adopt a more anti-establishment attitude that he started gaining a more significant foothold. Yet even during his rise, WWE's treatment of Jericho often felt inconsistent. There were moments when he was positioned as a top heel or face, only to find himself back in the mid-card after a period of success. One of the most glaring examples of WWE not fully capitalizing on Jericho's potential occurred during his WWE Championship reign in 2001. Jericho defeated The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin on the same night to become the first ever undisputed WWE champion, a feat that solidified his status as a top player in the company. However, Jericho's reign as champion was short-lived and marred by poor booking decisions that limited his impact. The company failed to build on his momentous win, and he was soon dropped back into lower-profile feuds, never truly getting the long-term recognition he deserved for that title run. While Jericho's early career in WWE had its high points, it also highlighted a deeper problem: the company's inconsistency in pushing him to the forefront. WWE often failed to see Jericho as the top-tier talent that he was, and his booking reflected that. Many fans can recall how he was sometimes relegated to nonsensical storylines, like the Y2J gimmick, which, while fun and memorable, didn't elevate him in the way his talent warranted. There was a sense that Jericho was often pigeonholed into comedic or mid-card angles, even when his in-ring abilities and charisma suggested he should be in the main event. The situation only worsened when Jericho started branching out into other ventures, such as his music career with his band Fozzy and his forays into acting. These endeavors led to frequent absences from WWE programming, and while Jericho would return with impressive storylines or surprise appearances, his time away from the company highlighted how WWE often failed to make the most of his unique talents. While Jericho's time away from the ring allowed him to evolve as a person and performer, it also highlighted the growing frustration with WWE's failure to consistently integrate him into the top storylines and events. One of the most egregious ways in which WWE failed Chris Jericho was their handling of his WrestleMania appearances. The company seemed to overlook Jericho's ability to craft compelling matches for the biggest show of the year. Despite his proven success in elevating matches with other top-tier performers, Jericho's time at WrestleMania often felt underwhelming. Jericho's first major WrestleMania match was against William Regal at WrestleMania 10-8, which, while entertaining, was not a show-stealing contest by any means. However, it wasn't until his second WrestleMania appearance that Jericho truly shined, facing off with Shawn Michaels in a thrilling bout at WrestleMania 9. This match not only showcased their incredible chemistry, but also highlighted Jericho's ability to work with one of the company's top stars and produce a classic. Despite that success, Jericho's subsequent WrestleMania appearances were less memorable. At WrestleMania 20, he faced off with Christian in a match that was overshadowed by other major storylines on the card. Even though their match had potential, the story behind it was weak, and Jericho's involvement felt more like a filler than a focal point of the show. As Jericho's career continued, he was often involved in lesser matches at WrestleMania, like his contest against Fandango at WrestleMania 29, which was a pure example of WWE wasting Jericho's talents. Instead of giving Jericho a high-profile match with a main event star, WWE gave him a match that was based on an entrance, with Fandango's dance moves being the central focus. Jericho was caught in a feud that was more about spectacle than substance, and it felt like a wasted opportunity to showcase his abilities on the biggest stage of them all. Another issue Jericho faced during his WWE tenure was how WWE booked him in the ring. For someone as technically proficient and versatile as Jericho, the company often pigeonholed him into gimmick matches or tag team situations that didn't highlight his full potential. This was especially noticeable in the later years of his career, when Jericho, despite being one of the most accomplished wrestlers in WWE history, was frequently used as a supporting character in feuds, rather than being the focal point of a major storyline. His matches with CM Punk, for example, were fantastic from a technical standpoint, but Jericho's character was often booked as secondary to Punk's own rise to superstardom. While Jericho was able to put on some of the best matches of his career, his role in the overall narrative of WWE was often reduced. Perhaps the most frustrating aspect of WWE's treatment of Chris Jericho was their inability to elevate him to the level of some of the other all-time greats. Jericho, by all rights, should have been in the conversation with wrestlers like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Triple H, but for many years WWE seemed hesitant to push him in the same way. While Jericho's matches were always solid and his promo work was legendary, WWE's narrative around him often limited his long-term legacy. Despite all of his success, Jericho was never given the consistent, top-tier pushes that could have solidified his place as one of the best to ever step into a WWE ring. His victories were often downplayed or buried under other major storylines, and his reigns as champion were often short-lived or ended abruptly. WWE also failed Jericho in their handling of his character development. While Jericho is known for his ability to reinvent himself and change his persona, WWE often relied on his past gimmicks or storylines, rather than giving him the space to evolve. Jericho's character was often put in a box, and when WWE did attempt to innovate, it was usually in the form of short-lived angles or forgotten storylines. The List of Jericho gimmick, for example, was a highlight of his career, but it was treated more as a passing joke than as an integral part of his character arc. WWE's failure to truly invest in Jericho's evolution beyond his existing persona limited his ability to continue being relevant in a constantly changing landscape. Despite all of this, Jericho's resilience and determination allowed him to maintain a significant place in WWE and in the wrestling industry as a whole. However, it's impossible to ignore the fact that WWE failed to maximize his potential. His legacy as a wrestler is undeniable, but it's also clear that WWE never fully capitalized on the many ways Jericho could have been pushed to the top. From wasted WrestleMania appearances to missed opportunities in the main event scene, WWE's treatment of Chris Jericho was, at times, more about what they didn't do for him than what they did.
In the years leading up to his departure from WWE,
Jericho had begun to feel increasingly alienated. One of the key reasons for this was his growing dissatisfaction with how WWE handled talent and storylines, especially for older, established stars like him. Jericho, who had reinvented himself numerous times throughout his career, felt that WWE had become a company focused primarily on youth and the next big thing, rather than valuing the experience and legacy of its veterans. In Jericho's view, WWE had stopped prioritizing the kind of creative freedom and long-term storytelling that had helped to define the company during the Attitude Era and the early 2000s. This growing sense of frustration wasn't just about not getting the main event spots. It was about feeling as though WWE was no longer the place where he could truly showcase his talents in the way that made him one of the most dynamic and versatile performers in the history of professional wrestling. In the end, Jericho's ability to succeed in spite of WWE's shortcomings is a testament to his extraordinary talent and work ethic. However, the story of Chris Jericho's career in WWE is also a story of how even the most talented and charismatic performers can fall victim to the whims of a company that doesn't always recognize their full potential. If WWE had fully embraced Jericho as the main event player he deserved to be, his career could have reached even greater heights. But despite the setbacks and missed opportunities, Jericho's legacy remains cemented in WWE history, and he continues to thrive, both in and outside the wrestling ring, showing the world that he is far more than what WWE sometimes chose to make of him.